worship pastors around here. Let's all stand as we worship Jesus this morning. When all I see is the battle, you see my victory. When all I see is a mountain, you see a mountain moved. And as I walk through the shadows, your love surrounds me. There's nothing to fear now, for I am safe with you. Come on, we sing. So when I fight, I'll fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. And every fear I lay at your feet. I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Yeah. And if you are for me, who can be against me? Jesus, there's nothing impossible for you. When all I see are the ashes, you see the beauty. When all I see is the cross, God, you see an empty tomb. So when I fight, I'll fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Every fear I lay at your feet. I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. Almighty fortress, you go before. Come on, you sing. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. Yeah, you shine in the shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. Almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. Oh, so when I fight, I'll fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Every fear I lay at your feet. I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Sometimes on this journey, I get lost in my mistakes. What looks to me like weakness is a canvas for your strength. My story isn't over, my story's just begun. Failure won't define me, 'cause that's what my Father did. Yeah, come on, sing it. Failure failure won't define me, 'cause that's what my Father does. Ooh, lay your burdens down. Ooh, here in the Father's house. Check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, oh, you're in the Father's house. Yeah. Rival's not the end game. The journey's where you are. You never wanted perfect, you just wanted my heart. And the story isn't over if the story isn't good, 'cause failure's never final when the Father's in the room. Yeah, failure's never final when the Father's in the room. Ooh, lay your burdens down. Ooh, here in the Father's house. Check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's house. Yeah. Come on, we sing. Prodigals come home. Prodigals come home. The helpless find hope. Love is on the move when the Father's in the room. Prison doors fling wide. The dead come to life. Love is on the move when the Father's in the room. Come on, miracles take place. The cynical find faith. Love is breaking through when the Father's in the room. Jericho walls are quaking. Strongholds now are shaking. Love is breaking through when the Father's in. Yeah, love is breaking through when the Father's in the room. Ooh, lay your burdens down. Ooh, here in the Father's house. Check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's house. Ooh, lay your burdens down. Ooh, here in the Father's house. Check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's house.
Dang, so good. Good morning. It's very clear I missed the wear a flannel shirt memo today. So if you wore one, good for you. You got the memo for some reason. So glad you guys are with us today and joining us, whether here in the building or online. We are together. We are one community. So we're glad you're with us. Today is great. We have, it's always so fun with the second service because I know what we just did because we did it. And it's a great morning. We have so much good stuff planned still. It's going to be an incredible time. I'm excited for all of us to go through it again and to go through it with you for the first time. So a couple things I just want to say before we go further. We've got a video we're going to watch in just a minute from our interim lead pastor, Danny Cox. Just kind of sharing some thoughts about this last year and this next year and kind of giving his heart to us, which I'm excited to hear again. Before he does, I woke up this morning, and you guys use a YouVersion Bible app. I don't know how many of you guys use that thing. If you don't use it, it's an incredible Bible app. It's great. But it has this thing where it pops up every day, like a verse of the day. And there was one this morning that popped up that just, for some reason, it just grabbed my attention, grabbed my heart in a powerful way, I think. Given so much of the last number of months, it just seemed to speak into it. It's a verse that's written in a book called Hebrews chapter 10, and it says, let us consider how we may stir up one another, which I think is a very interesting phrase because when you think of the last number of months, there's a lot of stirring up that's happened. We've gotten stirred up. We've been a part of conversations that got stirred up. Our world is stirring itself up. I've watched horrific things. Just yesterday, I watched two people that I've known for years have loved each other, walked with each other, have loved Jesus, served in the same community together, just tear each other apart online, stirring up and getting people to stir up with them. And so I read that and I thought, well, there's a lot of that happening right now, a lot of stirring up. But then here's the call for the follower of Jesus, because the verse doesn't end there. He says, let us consider how we may stir up one another to, there's an end, love and good deeds. There's a lot of stirring up in our world right now to a very different end. We as followers of Jesus are called to stir up. So not be withdrawn, but to be active, to stir up, but to stir up love and to stir up good deeds. I don't know what your anticipation is sitting here this morning, listening online. Some of you, your anticipation is very much there's a God and he's going to meet with you. Some of you, maybe it's, my anticipation is to try to figure out if there is a God. And if there is it Jesus? Here's what I believe, and I'm going to believe it for you. That he is. His name is Jesus. He's nuts about you, and he does have something he wants to say to you and to stir inside of you this morning. And my hope and prayer is that we'll all be able to receive it, to understand it, and to know what to do with it. So over the next couple minutes, I just want you to watch Danny as he tries to make some sense of just some of what we have been through as a community over the last year and as a world, and what it means for us as Kensington and a place of faith to be moving into this next year. So here's Danny.
Happy New Year, everyone. Well, we made it. It is the first full week of 2021, and these past few days have been filled with so much already, haven't they? And if you're like me, when you reach this time of the year, it's a time of evaluation, maybe even reevaluation, reflection, and also dreaming of what could be for this next year. When I get to this time of the year, I always ask God one simple word: what? What would you have for me this year? What would you have for me? What would you have for my family and for us as a church family? And I usually ask God for a word or a phrase. I don't know if you do that, but I was wondering can you give me one word, one phrase that I could hold on to as a theme for the year? And this year, the word that came to me was trust. Over the break between Christmas and New Year, I got a chance to read a number of books, and each one of them spoke so boldly to this idea of trusting Jesus. And one book even described it as a ruthless trust in Jesus. This ruthless trust in the one person in place that is truly worthy of our trust. Over these past 10 months, you know that we've watched this world shift under our feet. You know, we've been catapulted into political division and civil unrest and racial tension, and all of that while battling this global pandemic. And through all of this, as human beings, we are tempted to place our trust in flawed, broken human systems and leaders and governments and kingdoms and kings, and that never ends well. We know that. It brings to mind Psalm 146 says this: "Do not place your trust in princes, in human beings who cannot save. When their spirit departs, they return to the ground. On that very day, their plans come to absolutely nothing." If 2020 has taught us anything at all, it is that the things of this world are not worthy of our trust. But Jesus Christ is worthy of all of our trust and all of our devotion. So as we continue forward, moving into this new year, I am encouraging you, all of you, to evaluate and press into anything that you're placing your trust in other than Christ and Christ crucified. Our complete and deep trust in Jesus is our only hope. Our obedience and trust in Jesus is our only way forward. We came out of our Christmas season where we were reminded of how important the journey of life is and journey of faith is. And we looked at the journey of a particular group of people through the eyes of the wise men at Christmas as they took a similar journey. They left their homes, they left their families, all that was familiar, to pursue something eternal. Between our in-person services and our online audience, there's an estimated 34,000 people heard about Jesus, about the light of the world that penetrates the darkness and offers us a new kind of hope and trust for all humanity. We even got to see some of you get pretty crafty, showing off your homemade stars from the Christmas at Home kits. We could just feel the warmth as we witnessed these photos and videos of your living rooms, and they're lit up with candles as you sang along and worshiped Jesus. It really was truly a beautiful Christmas to remember. This year, we also saw so many of you in our Christmas Faith family step into the opportunity to trust God and to give a year-end Christmas gift, even in a year where we know that finances have been so difficult and such a struggle. And I want you to know something. Your giving is changing lives. It is supporting families facing financial hardships during this critical season. It's providing food and hygiene supplies to our global partners, even helping invest in technology so that we can expand our virtual engagement and reach more and more people. I mean, the list can go on and on and on, but I have to say this. I am so thankful for the generosity in this community. I cannot thank you enough for living so generously and open-handedly. You know, that's one of our deep values, that we would live our lives like this, open-handedly, and you showed that this year, especially this year when the hardships and the difficulties were so intense. So I just want to say to all of you, thank you so much for your generosity. You know, as I and we look back and learn from the joys and sorrows of 2020, I am still really hopeful for this next year ahead. And maybe for you, starting out this year of 2021 is going to happen by proclaiming your faith in Jesus Christ through baptisms. You know, we haven't had a baptism service in almost a full year, and we are so excited that we are going to be doing a baptism service on January 23rd, of course, safely and securely. And we're going to be able to celebrate all of those baptisms on the very last weekend of January. And now we know that there's nothing special or magical about the water of baptism, but it is a public declaration and ceremony that declares a life surrendered to Jesus. When we go under the water, it's symbolic of an old life being washed away. And when we come up, it signifies this new life found in Christ. If you are being nudged by God, I deeply encourage you to show up and be part of this celebration where you declare your faith in Christ through baptism. So sign up right now. It is truly one of the greatest services we get to do every year as we watch people's lives transform right in front of our eyes as they choose to place their trust in the only place and person worthy of their trust. Please come and join us on that. In some ways, the opening of 2021, the first week, shouldn't surprise us with all that we've gone through in the last 10 months. Everything that has transpired over the first several days of 2021 at our country's Capitol building reminds us of something, of how chaotic this world and life can really be. But it also made me think of what we just celebrated at Christmas. Jesus, who is called the Prince of Peace, left his perfect home to enter into our circumstances, our chaotic world run by broken human leaders and systems and governments and programs. And one truth that I've learned about Jesus is this, that he would enter into chaos, but he would never give into chaos. I've actually always dreamed that for me. I dreamed that for us. That could it be possible that we are a people that could move into chaos, but never give into that chaos? I think that's really possible. Along with the word trust this year, God gave me a phrase. He gave me a phrase from Scripture that would actually couple with the word trust. It's out of the book of Isaiah in chapter 52. And that chapter opens up with one word said 2 times. Awake, awake. It's God calling his people to wake up, calling his people to an awakening. And then a little bit more into the Scripture, he says this, shake off the dust, rise up. You know, I have a hard time looking at 2020 and saying that it was a gift. But could it be possible that the experiences of these past 10 months that have been so intense, that God is going to take those experiences and he's going to use them to shake us and to wake us up, to wake our souls to things that are so much more important? I believe that 2021 is going to be the year of awakening, of shaking off the dust of the things that are not of God and that are hindering us, and this rising up to trust God in a deeper way, making the very most of every opportunity that the Lord gives us. You know, Dr. Martin Luther King had a dream of what he called the beloved community. People from all different walks of life and races and socioeconomic backgrounds, different cultures and ethnicities, all coming together around love. God calls this beloved community his faith family, his royal priesthood, his holy nation. I'm praying deeply, I really am, that God shakes us, wakes us, and sends us out this year to change the world. I'm believing with all of my heart that God has great things in store for us for 2021 and looking forward to walking into that future. And I'm so grateful to be on this faith journey with all of you. I know that God is going to do extraordinary things. Happy New Year.
So if you don't know this, the series that we're in right now is being partly based off of a book by the same title, The Last Arrow, by a guy named Erwin McManus. McManus is a pastor out in LA. He is an author, obviously. He's a speaker, world-renowned, friend of Kensington. He's been here many times over the years. One of the things that McManus says in his book that I think is so powerful, and it's so poignant to today as well, is he says, nobody in life has ever accomplished anything significant alone. Nobody. And then he tells this story in the book even. He says, if you want to think about probably the most isolated effort or the most isolated career path that still you could say is alone but isn't, he says, think of a boxer. People might go, well, how about a boxer? Nobody else is in the ring with him. And then he says, well, what about the trainer, the sparring partners? And he goes to this whole list, and he just kind of doubles down on it. Nobody in this life accomplishes anything significant alone. And we're going to talk about that throughout the course of the rest of the morning. But that's one of the reasons why I also love that Danny mentioned baptism. Because baptism really is one of those steps that we take in our journey of faith to go public, to go loud, to go bold, to go clear, to say, I am a part of something bigger. It's not just me. I am a community. I am a family. I am a mission. I'm in this with them. So I would just say, as he did, if there's any rumbling that you have felt or begin to feel, even in the weeks to come throughout this series leading up to the baptism, like take that step. I mean, as we're talking about this series, The Last Arrow, living your life with no regret, making the most of every opportunity, I'm absolutely certain that for some of you, it's going to be that step that thrusts you into all that God has for you. So if that's what's churning inside of you, respond to it and move towards it. I also love the song that we're about to do now because I think it really speaks to this whole idea of, well, is that in us, there is something that craves. No matter how much you would say you're an introvert versus an extrovert, inside of all of us, there is something that craves and has a desire to be known and to be seen and to be loved.
Would you rescue me? Would you get my back? Would you take my call when I start to crack? Would you rescue me? Oh, would you rescue me? Would you rescue me when I'm by myself? When I need your love, if I need your help, would you rescue me? Oh, would you rescue me? No, we don't talk much, not anymore. Broken bottles and slamming doors, but we still care about each other. Say we care about each other. I knew life took us far away, but I still dream about the good old days when we took care of each other. We were living for each other. And I start to wonder if I'm slipping under. Would you rescue me? Would you get my back? Would you take my call when I start to crack? Would you rescue me? Oh, would you rescue me? Would you rescue me when I'm by myself? If I need your love, if I need your help, would you rescue me? Oh, would you rescue me? Would you rescue me? Would you get my back? Would you take my call if I start to crack? Would you rescue me? Oh, would you rescue me? Would you rescue me when I'm by myself? If I need your love, if I need your help, would you rescue me? Oh, would you rescue me? Yeah, I miss all the times we had. Can't forget what you can't get back, and you can't find it in another. Man, time, it ain't your lover. I don't care what you thought before. I'll be there anytime you call. Don't you ever call another. No need to call another. And I start to wonder if I'm you rescue me? Would you rescue me when I'm by myself? If I need your love, if I need your help, would you rescue me? Oh, would you rescue me? Oh, would you rescue me? Oh, would you rescue me? Would you rescue me? Would you rescue me? Oh, would you rescue me? Would you rescue me? Would you rescue me? Would you get my back? Would you take my call when I start to crack? Would you rescue me? Oh, would you rescue me? Would you rescue me when I'm by myself? If I need your love, if I need your help, would you rescue me? Oh, would you rescue me?
So good. Hey, proud dad moment. The one right there in the red, I made him. He hated it that I said that first service too. This is so cool. I've dreamed of being able to share these moments like this with him for Jesus. So I love it. I think the lyrics in that song are just so perfect and poignant to what I want to talk about today. And I want you to hear them again and just let them soak in a little bit. He just sang this: would you rescue me? Would you get my back? Would you take my call if I start to crack? In other words, are you going to bail on me when I flip my world upside down, even if I'm sabotaging it myself? Would you take my call if I'm the one cracking? And he doubles down on it. Would you rescue me? Would you rescue me? Clearly, there's a lot of things between any of us as human beings that is different. But we always say this, right? That there's more that makes us the same than makes us different. And I think one of the things at the core that makes us the same, I don't care who you are or how old you are or what era you were born in or what ethnicity or what color or what socioeconomic background, it doesn't matter. The one thing that breaches all of that, spans it all, and brings together a commonality between us, there's many, but one I want to talk about today is at the core of who we are, and it is a deep, deep desire to be seen and to be known and to be loved. And even in addition to that, to know that there is at least somebody in this life, if not a group of somebodies, that's got our back, right? Especially in the moments where we need some kind of a rescue, that we want to know that there'll be somebody on the other end when we call, that there'll be somebody, even if we're the ones sabotaging our own lives, they're not going to walk out and they're not going to bail on us. All of us as people have that desire within us, the desire to be known, the desire to be loved, the desire not to go through life solo. Last week when we started this whole series, though, we said that there is, according to Paul in this book of Ephesians in the Bible, there is this evil that laces every single day that we live is an evil to one end. Paul says it lulls us essentially into a sleep, which is why last week we looked at this. He says, wake up. Why? Because in this life, the days are evil. If the days are evil and he says, wake up, what he's saying is this evil will lull you and I into a sleep where we will miss the purposes that God put us here for. And here's the funny thing. You can actually live a life successful, driven, accomplish all kinds of things and still be asleep. Still be asleep to all the reasons that God put you here on this planet. And so Paul's challenge to us last week was wake up or you will sleep through the purposes God made you for. Here's today. If we can sleep through the purposes, I think the other thing that we can also sleep through are the relationships God made us for. Is the people that God wants us in community with, doing life with together. Is that we can sleep through not just the things that God made us to do, but we can sleep through the people he made us to do life with, which is why I think Paul's words are still the same. Wake up. Why? So you can make the most of not just every opportunity, but every relationship that God has for you. So I love the idea of the last arrow title. And this is where we deviate a little bit from McManus. I don't know if McManus in LA is a hunter. Don't get the idea that he is, but I am. So when I think last arrow, I'm thinking I would never go out into the woods with one arrow. But if I did, I guarantee you I would make every decision different. I would weigh my decisions differently. I'd be more intentional. I'd be more strategic, more methodical. Like I would just realize I've got one shot. This is it. And so I would be different. And maybe you're going, I'm not a hunter. Well, I don't like that story. I don't like that analogy. Poor Bambi. Well, I would tell you that here's a different one then. I saw the same dynamic with my grandmother weeks before she passed away years ago. We were talking multiple times before she was gone, and there was this moment I remember thinking she was struggling to talk because she was talking slower and slower. And I started to realize the more I listened to her that she wasn't talking slower because she was struggling, it was because she was weighing. She was weighing her words, she was weighing her thoughts, she was weighing the conversation because she knew these would be some of the last conversations that I'm gonna have, and there was just a different priority, there's a different importance that went into those moments. That's what this series is about. What does it look like for us to live that way, to live with this last arrow reality that this life is all we have? As lyrical poet Eminem says, you only get one shot, so don't miss your chance. Opportunity comes once in a lifetime. I was gonna rap that for you this morning, but I'm not sure you guys are ready for my math skills yet. So one day, maybe. I did ask you, however, at the start of the series last week, if you would pray a prayer each day of the series throughout the whole course of January, maybe even multiple times, find space, find place and way to pray this simple prayer that would really be just us sincerely going to God saying, do this, shift our heart so that we will be people that make the most of every opportunity by caring about what you care about and not caring about the things that you don't. So here's what I'm gonna ask you to do. I wanna put that up on the screen right now, and I wanna start with this and just ask, I don't do this often, but if you just stand up with me for a minute, and I know for some of you, maybe this isn't your desire yet. And you're like, I'm not even sure that there is a God. That's awesome. We're glad you're here. We made this place for you. Some of us are like, that is my desire right now. If it is, would you just out loud, can we just offer this up to God by way of request and prayer right now? Here we go. Jesus, cultivate my heart to care about the things you care about and to let go of the things that you don't. If you'll stand up, I'm going to kneel and just pray. Father in heaven, I just love you. I love your presence here with us. I love your scriptures that you've given to guide us. I love your Holy Spirit that counsels us. I love the fact that you, the God of creation who does not need us, still made us and then didn't just make us and leave us. You made us and drew us, invited us into relationship. And so, Father, I pray that this morning, that very reality of you being a relational God would speak to us about our own relationships, the ones we're in, the ones that we're not, the ones that may need to change. And I pray that your scriptures would give guidance and your Holy Spirit would give counsel, and that you would use my words to ultimately honor Jesus, to lift him up, and to do nothing but exalt him. And it's in his name I pray. Amen. So one of the things we do here as a community is, as Danny was mentioning a minute ago, we're going to take a second here and do it together today, is we give. We open up our hands. And so, and not just thank you for last year, but thank you for your weekly giving, and it makes everything happen that we do as a community. If you are, and this looks like a pretty full room today, so if you are just joining us back for the first times in a long time, we don't pass anything these days, but we can still give on our app, online, and through text. And for those of you that really love to do the physical, we have some baskets in the back that we're going to use. You can drop in before you walk out. So again, this isn't about money, it's about mission. I say that every time, and I just want us to always remember that. Not money, this is mission, and these moments make our mission possible and make it accomplished. So thank you. All right, 1 Peter, I want to go there for a minute. You'll learn this more and more about me over time. One of the things I love to do is I love to grab a verse out of the scriptures that give us trajectory for the morning that isn't necessarily always where we're going to camp all day long. So this is going to be one of those mornings. This is not where we'll be all morning, but it is going to, I think, give us some direction for where it is that we're going to go today and kind of lay some foundation. Peter, if you do not know, was one of Jesus' closest friends, ran in the deepest counsel with him. Of the 12, there were 3 that Jesus was the closest with. Peter was of those 3. Peter was the one who, when he would not recant his faith in Jesus being God and resurrected, they said, we'll crucify you. He said, do it upside down because I'm not even worthy to die like Jesus. That's Peter. So Peter, before his death, he did write some books in the Bible that were originally letters to the churches. And in one of these, under his name, 1 Peter, 2 verses contain some of the most important things that I think Peter ever wrote about who we are to be and what God's work in us is to the end of. And this is what he says, verse 9 of chapter 2. But you are a chosen people and a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, so that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness and into wonderful light. Once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. What cannot be overlooked is Peter says, here's what God's doing in you, and to the end of, he even says, here's why he's doing, so you can declare his glory. So this is really important. And you cannot overlook, you cannot overstate even, I don't think, that as he talks about God's work in us and what it's for, it is talked about in the context of plurality, not individuality. In other words, Peter doesn't say, you are a royal chosen person, a royal priest, a holy individual. He says, you're a chosen people, that's plural. You're a royal priesthood, plural. Holy nation, plural. Again, even towards the bottom, verse 10, he says, once you were not a people, but now you are a people. And everything and all the emphasis here is about God's work in us and through us in the context of community and plurality. Here's the problem with that. We have taken our approach to God and made it very individual. Even listen to a lot of the songs that we sing and the artists that we love. So much of the message is very much you and Jesus. Even in the 80s, there was this Jesus and me movement that really started to take over a lot of the youth ministry that was happening at the time. You just need you and Jesus and nobody else. No, that's wrong. It's not even biblical. And then we see it laced throughout so much of Christendom. Again, our music, it's just God and I, God and me, do for me, you and me. And yet I read all throughout the scriptures and there's this us sentiment, us sentiment, us sentiment. And we kind of dismiss it and overlook it. And part of that, I think, is cultural. The fact that we as Westerners are far more individualistic than a lot of other societies around the world. We know this, right? There are other cultures that live much more communal. They live much more tribal, even if you will. Not us. I mean, West in general, we've always kind of been the Mavericks, pull myself up by my bootstraps, I'll get it done, I don't need anybody else. And that's just been kind of our way of life, especially in our country. And then there's even certain parts of our country that's more than that than less than that. You look even historically, there has been such a shift that we can't deny that's happened that's moved us more and more this way, even in Western culture. I mean, for example, we're no longer the nation of people that sit on our front porches and talk to our neighbors and get to know the neighborhood. Most of us don't even have a front porch anymore. Now we're the nation of people that hang out in the backyard. We build big fences and privacy bushes because we want to be left alone. You know, even just simple niceties and pleasantries. Like, have you ever been walking down the street and some random stranger walks by and they're like, hey, and you're like, freak? You're like, what are you? Like there's a hesitation, right? There's a skepticism. What do you want? What are you talking to me for? And in different places of our country, that's different. Like I've spent a lot of time down south and I have some buddies in Texas and it's like every time I go to Texas, I'm like, oh, people are nice. There is such a thing. Right? And then sometimes you come back here and here we're just more guarded in the north. We're a little bit more withdrawn in the north. There used to be a day when if a neighbor moved in, you'd run across the street. You'd introduce yourself pretty quickly. Maybe even bring a pie or a cake or some kind of gift to say, welcome to the neighborhood. Now what do? We just kind of peek through the blinds. Are they creeps? I don't know. I don't like that guy. And if you're the one moving in and somebody brings you a pie, what do you do with it? You throw it away. You're like, I don't know who made this or what they did with it. Did they even wash their dishes good? I don't know. Like, we're just so skeptical. Somebody just in between services showed me a comedian. I can't remember what his name was, but he was talking about this. She's like, oh, you should have used this. I'm like, you should have showed it to me sooner. And he was talking about how there was a day when somebody would ring your bell at the house, ring your doorbell, or even on the phone would ring, and everybody in the house was excited. Somebody's here. And you're like going, and you're opening the door. You're like, come on in. Like, do you remember the day when your mom would go to the store and buy something, or your dad for groceries, and they'd be very clear, like, this is for guests. Do not touch this. This cake is for company. You get the moldy muffins. Company, you, right? Like, not anymore. What happens now if your doorbell rings? Like, everybody goes combat style on their stomach and crawls across the living room, you know? It's like, don't look out the window. We just all panic. We don't want anybody coming over. There's just been such a shift and a change. You know that statistically, even the average American has 50% less friends now than they did 20 years ago. That's weird. We're literally losing friendships. And here's the irony, is that with the rise of the internet and social media, we're way more connected than we've ever been. And yet we're more lonely. And we have less people in our lives and less relationships. And then there's this last year that, I don't know, maybe some of you are tired of hearing about it, but it just has bearing on this moment. So let's just acknowledge the reality that over the course of this last year, through fear and frustration and hate, there was exposed a very dark side of us that I think exposed an already present polarization between people and created even more of it. So that now we're even more withdrawn. we're more frustrated with one another. And if this is what you're attempting to live your life by, then it should not surprise us that God's desire is that we would step into the sense of community he's created within the church to experience something beautiful, something powerful, something intended to be formative and transformative in our lives. It shouldn't be a mystery. The book of Genesis, I want to go there very quickly. Again, probably learned this about me over time too. I spent a lot of time in Genesis, often go back here, largely just because I believe how he began is indicative of who we're to become. So Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 says this. Then God said, let us make man in our image and in our likeness, and so they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all of the creation that moves along the ground. In this verse is contained one of the most debated and frankly attempted to be understood doctrines in the scripture, the triune God, that there is one God in three persons. He says this, then God said, let us make man in our image. There is one God in three persons, and not, if that's a new concept to you, not like Norse mythology, Greek mythology, Odin, Thor, Zeus, like literally one being, but three persons. You're like, I don't understand that. None of us do. We're attempting to. It's one of the confusing things in the Bible, but there is a reality here that God exists in a community with himself. Here's the reality, and here's what's important about that. If we were then, like this verse said, made in his image and likeness, we were made to live in community. It's not an option. It's literally woven into the fabric and the DNA of who we are in his image and likeness. We're made for this. We're not made to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. We're not made to maverick our way through life. We're not made to live so isolated like so many of us do. That's why even when God looked at his creation, at the time when it was all perfect, no sin had entered in, no fall had happened. You've got Adam and him in a one-on-one relationship. You've got the weather's perfect every single day. It's just beautiful. All the animals are under his authority and obey him. Like this isn't even like sit Fido, it's sit lion, sit wolf. Like, and God looks at all of that and says, not good. For what? For man to be alone. Which is mind-boggling when you think about this. God and Adam have a closer relationship than any human being has ever had. And God says, there's still a loneliness you have. Why? Because there's not somebody like you to be in community with you. Adam's like, but I got Fido. Newsflash, dog, not man's best friend. Man is. And we were made for one another. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes when we talk about community and being in relationship, there's an assumption people have a tendency to make about me from this stage, which is, well, you're very extroverted. And I'm not. This is what God's called me to do, so this is what I do. But you get me off the stage, I promise you. Some of you have met me one-on-one, and you can attest to this. I'm a little weird. I'm awkward sometimes. I don't make friends very easily. I say most of my friends, and some of my best ones are sitting over here, are literally only because of my wife. Like, she makes the introduction. She creates our friendships. Like, she's amazing, totally opposite of me. So I want you to hear me say this. Everything I'm talking about today, I have to work at. I have to strive for. It does not come naturally to me like some people who are much more relational. That's why I also want to introduce you to my community, the people that I have been fighting for over 20 years to have this kind of community and relationship with. On the screen, I'll introduce them to you real quick. They can't all be here. One's a pastor. All of us go to different churches. Over on the far left, that's Jeremy, his wife Jen. Then there's Aaron and Carrie. And then there's me and my wife Nicole. And then Joe and Renee over on the opposite end. And I'll just tell you, these people, we've been in each other's lives 20-some years now, and we have gone through everything together. Loss of people we love, having kids and trying to figure out how to raise kids, and job changes and moves and hurts of life and devastating moments and celebratory moments and vacations and times where we've been at each other's throats, times where we're trying to decide if we like each other very much. And I'll tell you that one funny story. So Jeremy and Jen there on the far left, orange hat. So my wife and I met them when we were working at Outback Steakhouse years ago, and God just gave us an incredible opportunity to be a big part of their faith journey, coming to know Jesus. And they were the first wedding I ever did. They got engaged and like, hey, would you do our wedding? I'm like, I don't know how to do one of those, but let's do it. So I did their wedding. It was just such a cool moment. We have such a history with each other. And I'll never forget, about 5 years into our relationship, my wife and I were just in a season where we were just at each other. And we were away for a weekend with all of our friends, and it just became very apparent, like Craig and Nicole are having some conflict. And I'll never forget Jeremy pulling me aside. We got back, pulled into the driveway. Everybody's going to their separate vehicles. And he's like, hey, come here. So he pulls me aside, and he just kind of laid into me. You're not loving your wife well, and here's some things I saw this weekend, and man, what's up? And I'll tell you honestly, I stood there for a minute, and I thought, bro, I introduced you to Jesus and married you. Shut up. You can't tell me nothing, right? And there's like that posture I had, but he was right, and I needed to hear it, and he really forced me to have to look at some things. Like I'm just saying, like I don't know where I'd be without these people. There's a time when Jesus, his blood family came to talk to him, and he's like, I don't have time for that. I'm with the people who are about the kingdom with me, and that's my family. Like, this is my family. And I just don't know where I'd be if it wouldn't be for them. And it hasn't always been easy, but we have fought for this relationship. We have fought for this community. And in the community, watch this, turned into a tribe. Once we all started finally having kids, where's our tribe? So that's just this last summer, one of our annual trips that we take where we all go away together. And just because we're strolling down my picture family lane, I'll show you one more. Here's what the dads all do when we get together with our kids. We shoot them. We're mostly hunters, so if it's not an animal, I guess it's our kids. So this is what we do. So anyways, this is our people, and I just love it because almost all of the kids refer to the adults as aunts and uncles, and the kids are like brothers and sisters. It's going to get really weird one day if any of them fall in love with each other, but that's our people, and my life is so much richer. Jesus has done some of his best transformation in me as a result of that community. Here's what C.S. Lewis, author and pastor, and if you don't know him, Chronicles of Narnia, he's that guy, wrote that. Lewis says this about friendship. Friendship is the greatest of worldly goods. Certainly to me, it is the chief happiness of life. If I had to give a piece of advice to a young man about a place to live, I think I should say sacrifice almost everything to live where you can be near your friends. So here's what I want to do. A couple minutes left with you, and I want to take the idea of friendship, and I want to be careful that we don't walk out of here and think friendship, community in some fluffy level. I want to bring it down and put some handles on it. Like, what does that actually mean, particularly in the context of the church? What is God calling us into? And there's this story in the Old Testament part of the Bible, so if you're by any chance still in Peter, you got to go way back the other direction. It's in the book of 1 Kings that tells a story that I think gives some very clear guidance as to what it means to be in community, and even at times, who and how to step out of community. So chapter 12, verse 1 says this. Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all of Israel had gone there to make him king. When Jeroboam, son of Nebat, heard this, he was still in Egypt where he had fled from King Solomon. So he returned from Egypt. So they sent for Jeroboam, and he and the whole assembly of Israel went to Rehoboam and said, your father put a heavy yoke on us. Now lighten the harsh labor and the heavy yoke he put on us, and we will, can you say it, finish it? And we will serve you. So really quick, here's the context. It is a transition of throne in the nation of Israel. Still very early on in Israel's lifespan. The first king of Israel was a guy named Saul. Then there was David, greatest king over Israel. David had a son Solomon. Solomon was the previous king. He's dead and gone. Now his son stands in line for the throne. So that's this moment. Here's the thing though. Solomon, great king most of his time. There were moments he made mistakes like anybody else, but towards the end, there was a conflict that erupted in his council. He had one of his council members, a guy named Jeroboam, who he began to be in disagreement with. If you study the history, go back and read even some of just the previous chapters, you'll see very quickly that their fracture was a result of this fracture, which is so important to always remember. When we find ourselves fractured with people, I guarantee you it's a product of a fracture between us and God. All the time, that's what happens. So there's this fracture that takes place. And so some people in Israel decide, we're pro Jeroboam. Other people, no, we're staying with Solomon. So Solomon gets frustrated and doubles down his frustrations on the people that basically aren't on his side. So there is a group, a contingent of Israel that did not have a good experience with Solomon towards the end. So now Solomon's son is in line for the throne. And all of the people, including Jeroboam, come to Rehoboam and say, listen, if you'll lighten up from how your dad was, we will serve you. They're essentially saying to him something that in many regards I think has become a four-letter word in our day and age. They're saying we're going to commit. We'll commit to you. I think one of the things that we have to relearn the ability to do in the church is we have to relearn what it means for us to commit to one another. And I want to put some handles on that, because if you go, I don't even know what that means or what that looks like. I actually think we see it all throughout the scriptures. And I think we see it in what they say to him. We will serve you. The true power and essence of commitment in the Christian community is when we do what we're led to do all throughout the scriptures, put others' needs ahead of our own. Do not think more highly of yourself than you ought, but consider others ahead of you. It's what we see that Jesus did in Philippians. When God chose to become a human being and dwell among us, it says, though he was God, he did not use that to his favor, but instead he chose to humble himself. And what's the word? You know, he says he became a servant. I think true commitment in this context is us saying, I'm not here to get something from you. I'm here to love you. I'm here to serve you. I'm here to put your needs ahead of my own. And here's the upside down paradoxical nature of the kingdom of God. That works that way. Because typically we go, no. If I just give all to you, then I don't get anything. Who takes care of my needs? But so many of us have lived our lives trying to get from others, and we still find ourselves empty. That's because the paradox of the upside down kingdom of Jesus is when you lose your life, you gain your life. When you live for others, what happens? Your needs start to get met as well. And so you have this community of people saying, we're gonna serve you. And I think it's so much what the church has to learn to step back into is we will commit to one another. So often what commitment has really become in the church today is more of a relational kind of game of let's make a deal. If you do what I want, act how I want, never offend me, and the list goes on, then we're gonna be good with each other. But the minute something doesn't work the way I want, I'm out. And so we have whole communities now that function that way. Whole communities within our church world that have come to believe that the greatest way to experience the community and the power of the church is by being in the same room together on one particular day, and that's never been God's desire. The greatest way we experience the power and the beauty of community is being in one another's lives, not just sitting in the same room. Because what happens when you think it's just sitting in the same room is the minute the message doesn't go off well, or the music's too loud, or somebody says something offensive, we bail and we're gone and we're out. And that approach to community is leaving us absent, experiencing the full power of what God made us to experience with one another. Frankly, I think in many ways it's even killing the church. But when instead we say, I'm here. I want to know you. I want to be known by you. I've got your back. When things get rough, I'm not going to bail. And even if you're the one that cracks and you start to sabotage your own life, I'm here for you. There's something beautiful and powerful that happens in that context that doesn't happen outside of it. And I know if I was talking to any of us one-on-one, we all have different experiences with relationships and community, and some of that has been formed by our personality, and some of it's been formed by our experiences. And some of you might say, hey, I get everything you're saying, but listen, here's the reality, man. I've been here at this place, even for a while, and I don't have any friends. I don't know anybody yet. Or a lot of times what I'll hear in this kind of a moment is people tell me how unfriendly people are around them, and that's why they don't have any relationships, and that's why they're lonely. And here's what's interesting. I've had that conversation so many times over the years that I've started to see that it almost always goes the same way. And here's how it usually goes. I start asking a few questions. Those questions very quickly start to reveal some things to me that are almost always consistent. Things like, you come late, you leave early, there's no time given for relationships in the parking lot or in the lobby. You're just kind of in and out. You're not involved in a group. You don't really come to any events or functions. Or sometimes even I'll have the person say to me, well, I stay back and nobody approaches me. I'm like, have you ever looked at your face? You have this thing about it that says you eat small children. Like you're intimidating. Like you might want to change that. Some of you, the best thing you could do is go home, look in the mirror, pretend somebody came up and talked to you that you don't know, and watch what your face does. And I'm that guy. I'm totally that guy. I don't know how many times my wife has had to elbow me and go, change your face. Like, I don't know how to do that, but I'll try. But I just start to realize, like, we're not taking the steps so often when we're like, nobody here knows me. I have no friends. It's because you're not taking the step. I'm going to say something that some of you will disagree with, some of you won't like, but for some of us, it might be the thing we need to hear. If you're here and you're going, I don't have any friends here and I've been here for a while, that's not our fault. It really isn't. Like everything about this place is leveraged to your spiritual relational success. There are people here just waiting to love you and get to know you, but you've got to take a step.
You got to take a step and not expect them to do all the work. But everything about what we have done and tried to build here and regularly reassessing to do better is leveraged for your success relationally and your success spiritually. If you can't make friends here, you probably can't make friends. Like, that's what we're here for. And that's what we want to be. And some of you might go, well, yeah, but I was once burned by a church or burned by a group of people at a church. And so that's why I keep my distance. I can hear that. I was burned by a cup of coffee once and I still drink it. I slipped on the ice recently and I still go outside. I literally zip my neck up in a zipper of my coat and I still wear a coat. And I'm not, listen, some of you are like, I'm so offended. You're downplaying my hurt. I'm not downplaying anybody's hurt. Your hurt's legitimate and it was real. Here's what some of you need to hear. You're not the only one that's been hurt and let down, nor are you innocent of doing it to others. And so often, the attempts that we put in place to protect ourselves from how we were previously hurt end up doing as much or more damage than what we're trying to protect ourselves from. We were made for this. So I'm going to give you just 2 practical steps today. Both of them are come very quickly now as we get to the close, but one is just this. You and I want us to be people, we need to be people that make commitment to the people of the church more than the place of the church. You know, we do this thing in church where when we talk about where we go and where we're committed, it's more to the place. I go here, I go to that place, I go to Kensington. Can I just tell you, and I might get a talking to about this later in the week, don't commit to Kensington. Kensington's just a name. It's an entity. It's a 501c3. It's bylaws and buildings. It is a mission. But what fuels everything about this place is you, the people. Don't commit to the Kensington, commit to the people. When we commit to the place, it becomes very easy to bail when things don't go the way that we want and miss the power and the beauty of true community. It would be like getting married and saying your vows to the house and not your spouse, right? Like, our commitment is to the people. And remember what I said about commitment. Commitment is a posture that says, I'm here to serve you. I'm here to put your needs ahead of my own. And we can only start to do that when we're in relationship with one another. So I want to bring up Shar for just a minute, who runs our discipleship here and our groups, because I want to make sure on a day like this that we get very practical about how do we do this. So it's not just a concept up here. So for just a minute, would you welcome Shar as she takes the stage over and just shares?
You know what I love? I see a lot of faces out here, and the reason I know you is because you've done that thing. You've taken that step into community, and it's been so fun to get to know so many people. But yeah, it's my absolute passion to connect people into relationships, but not just relationships, the ones that are really going to draw you closer to Jesus. So I love being on this team and getting to do what I get to do. And so what can you do to take the next step? You can go to kensingtonchurch.org/groups. I think we have a slide. It's that easy. kensingtonchurch.org/groups. And what you're going to find there is all of the opportunities that we have right now that are open for you to check out. And all you have to do is click on one of the groups, and you're not committing to it. You're going to send an inquiry, and someone can get back with you and chat with you about what that group is about. And we are also inviting you, you'll see on that landing page, us discipleship directors are going to be hanging out every Sunday. We know a lot of people are going to be more comfortable right now chatting online, so we have some Zoom meetings that we're inviting people to on the next 3 Sundays to just pop on and ask questions. Hey, what are your groups? I don't really feel like reading about them. I want to know. I want to hear. We'll talk to you about what we have to offer. So take advantage of that. Check out the groups page. Jump onto one of our Zoom meetings and chat with us about what might be your best next step. Because here's the thing, we talk a lot about this community, lifelong friendships, and you may not jump into a group and find that group of lifelong friendships that are going to last forever.
Sure, we had people throughout the course of our relationships all forming that we don't talk to anymore and aren't necessarily in. Yeah, everybody's not going to become your pallbearer.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's a process, and here's the thing but you're not going to find those friendships and relationships if you don't take a step and at least start making those connections. So we have a lot of things that are really an easier first step, or maybe that intimidates you. Maybe it's like, I'm not ready for that level of vulnerability, but we have we have courses that you can come and take, like a 5-week virtual Bible basics course and really start getting more comfortable. So you're ready for a Bible study group and you're not intimidated. Or we have our Alpha group, which is designed for us to connect in discussions around the faith. Where else do you get to come and be free to say anything you want with no judgment around the Christian faith and all of your big questions. That's what Alpha is all about. So we invite you to things like that, and you meet people. And you may click with them, you may not, but it moves you towards what we ultimately know is important, is finding that group where you connect, because we have women's groups and men's groups and singles, but maybe there's another place that you start. I'll tell you, we have care groups here for the people who are experiencing pain and need healing. And that might be your first best step. Maybe it's a grief recovery or divorce recovery or celebrate recovery group. But like I love what Craig said, we do everything we can here to create the opportunities, but we really need you to take that step. And community doesn't happen without like really being committed to it. I know for myself, I am naturally wired to want to be in community, but my calendar has to reflect that, and it's a sacrifice. Something has to give to make time for that. So I really encourage you to say, I know it's really hard. Let's be honest, COVID, we've got a lot of the groups are meeting online, and it doesn't feel as appealing maybe right now, or you're not sure about being around people. I'm feeling that too. But if we just make every excuse not to make that a priority, there will always be an excuse. So maybe 2021 is the time, just say, I'm gonna take a step. I'm just gonna try something. And one more thing I just have to say, and I know I said I'll talk all day if you don't, because I get so excited about this, but you know, and Craig already kind of said this. It is you that is the church. And what really makes this church happen is all those group leaders who are out there saying, I want to invite you in. So maybe God is saying that's what your role is. Maybe you should lead a group. Maybe you're the person who has an ability to draw people together and form some community. You don't have to be a teacher. You don't have to be gifted in teaching or be a Bible scholar to be able to say, I really want to connect some people. And that's something I'd love to talk to you about, because that's what makes these groups happen, is someone stepping up and saying, I could do that. With maybe a little training, some resources. I want to be one of those people that forms a group. So if that's where your next step is, I'd love to talk to you about that too. So kensingtonchurch.org/groups. Please go visit that, and even if you are already in a group, maybe it would familiarize you with what's going on around here, because maybe someone's going to ask you about a group you were in or what's going on around here, and you're going to be the one that connects them into something. So thanks for giving me a minute, and I hope a lot of you find that connection this year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shar. Shar she is one of the best things about Kensington. She is awesome. You know those people that when you're in their presence, you just want to be better? True, that's sharp. So thank you. All right, we're going to bring it to a close, and I want you to see how this story ends real quick, because I don't think just making a commitment is the only thing that we've got to do if we're going to live in community. But the reality is, there's really only two things in life that I think create who we are. One is obviously the choices that you make, but the other is the people you choose and the people you're in life with. And for some of us, I think we need to make the commitment to step into some relationships. And some of us, I think, need to leave here today and start maybe evaluating some of the relationships we're in. This is what happens and how it ends. Remember, he said, hey, go away for a couple days. They said, lighten the load and we'll serve you. Verse 5. Rehoboam answered the crowd and he said, go away for 3 days, then come back to me. So the people went away. Then King Rehoboam consulted the elders who had served his father Solomon during his lifetime. How would you advise me to answer these people, he asked, and they replied to him. If today you will be a servant to these people, so I love that. He said, well, first you serve them, and you serve them and give them a favorable answer, then they'll serve you. Verse 8, but Rehoboam rejected the advice of the elders that was given to him and consulted the young men instead who he had grown up with. And he asked them, what is your advice, and how should we answer these who say to me, lighten the yoke your father put on us? Verse 10, this is what they say to him, their counsel. The young men who had grown up with him replied, these people who have said to you, your father put a heavy yoke on us, but make our yoke lighter. Now tell them, my little finger is thicker than my father's waist. My father laid a heavy yoke on you, I'll make it heavier. My father scourged you with whips, I will scourge you with scorpions. So he draws the people back, and that's exactly the message that he gives them. I think one of the things that we also have to do is we're talking about this idea of the community God has made us to live in. Step number 2, some of us need to evaluate and potentially even reshape our circle. Evaluate it and possibly reshape it. And that's going to involve 2 things, inviting and exiting. There are some relationships this next year you need to begin to invite into your life. That's you taking the step towards some people. Your circle needs to include some people that it doesn't right now. But there's potentially some of you that your circle, there needs to be some exiting. Maybe you out of a circle of friends, or maybe you exiting out of a relationship that's not very healthy for you right now. Because ultimately what we have to do is ask whatever tribe we're in, because you're all in one, whether it got created for you, whether it was intentional, whether it just organically happened, all of us run in tribes. Does your tribe pull you more towards Jesus or more away from him? You go, it's kind of neutral. It's not. I promise, it's not. It's one or the other. My son, he used to be in 4-H years ago. I know you guys have all been like, what in the heck is there a boat on the stage for? So he used to be in 4-H, and one of the things that I would do is volunteer and chaperone at a lot of their events, and one that they did several times a year was a canoe trip. And so the first time I ever went on the canoe trip to chaperone, they put me in a canoe much like this with, I want to say there was 5 of us, 4 kids and me, which is way too much for this canoe, but that's what they did. And not a single kid in that boat had ever held an oar or been in a boat, knew nothing about what to do. So I'm like, well, this is going to be interesting. I would love to tell you that we just went in circles. We didn't even do that. I don't know what we did. We zigzagged. We flipped over multiple times. It was horrible. I had this one little girl that literally went into a panic attack and was crying. I'm like, I don't know what to do. What do I do? So we get back. The day's over. The guy who was leading the whole thing, he's like, hey, thanks so much for being here and helping out today. Hope I can count on you next time. I was like, nope, absolutely not. Like, this was nuts. I did. I went back. But here's what I wonder for some of you. I wonder if that's your life right now. Like, have you ever been at a place in life where you've thought, how did I get here? How did I become this person? How is this the life I'm living right now? Well, your choices, for one. Obviously, the choices you made yesterday have produced who you are today, and the choices you're making today are creating who you'll be tomorrow. And almost nothing in all of life will influence your choices more than the people you choose. The people that are in this boat with you, that are in your tribe. And here's the really frightening thing. No matter how much you go, but I'm paddling to Jesus. I'm going to church, and I'll take the step into doing things here and serving. I'm reading my Bible, and I'm going to download the YouVersion app even now. The problem is you're one oar of several others in that boat. And if they're not pulling towards Jesus and that's your tribe, you're not going towards him. You can paddle as hard as you want. But if your tribe is pulling you to him, that's where you're going. Some of us need a tribe pulling us to Jesus because we don't even know how to use this yet. We don't know how to move towards him. And here's what's so cool. This is not a harsh correction type of thing. Get in community and don't do it alone. It's an invitation to a power and an experience and a formation that can't happen when you're not in a tribe moving towards Jesus. So I would just ask you, does your tribe pull you to him? Or are they pulling you somewhere else? And if the answer is somewhere else, then you need to evaluate with him what needs to exit and who needs to be invited. We were made for this. And so I want to end like we began, asking Jesus to recreate our hearts for what his is for. So Father, I say this to you on behalf of us all. Would you, Jesus, help us to care about the things that you care about and to let go of the things that you don't. May we not be like Rehoboam, who mixes up who should have been invited and who should have been exited, that we would find ourselves tasting and rejoicing in and experiencing the depth, the beauty, the transformation, and the power of what it means to serve and be committed to your body. Amen.
Sing this with me. People come together, strangers, neighbors, our blood is one. The children of generations, of every nation, of kingdom come. Don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high, don't fear no evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth. God is madly in love this morning? Swing wide, all you heavens. Let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All his children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. You sing it out, come on. Swing wide, all you heavens. Let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All his children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. Come on, one more time, sing it out. Swing wide, swing wide, all you heavens. Let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All his children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. His name is Jesus. Sing his name. Jesus, our redemption, our salvation is in his blood. Jesus, Jesus, the light of heaven, friend forever, his kingdom come.
That's good. I hope it feels like today filled your soul up a little bit. I hope you felt encouraged, and I hope that as you walk out, if there is a step you need to take towards community or baptism, we have steps to take, and I pray and hope you'll take them. Also, as always, in the back, we have a team that's here dedicated to you, our prayer team. Sometimes things get churned up, may have nothing to do with what we talked about. You just need to process it through. You need somebody to listen. You need somebody to pray. That's what they're here for. Let them do that. Otherwise, as you walk out, be friendly, say hello, say goodbye. Glad you were with us today. May you go in peace. We'll see you next Sunday.